Hello everyone. Welcome to our lecture on transformations in island tourism. We are a team of teachers from the Graduate School of Humanities and Social Sciences at Hiroshima University. My name is Carolin Funck.
Hello everyone, my name is Kyungjae Chang.
Hi everyone, my name is Rie Usui.
Hi everyone, my name is Chu Meng.
This lecture will consist of 8 parts. So we have the first lecture today, Island Tourism Potentials and Problems, and then we have the other 7 lectures as follows, focusing on sustainable tourism, nature-based tourism, popular culture, and island creative tourism, with an emphasis on island tourism in Japan. So today, in the first part, we will talk about potentials and problems of island tourism in general. And our first question is, why do we dream of islands? Or why are island tourism and island studies so important? We will then introduce some of the opinions of our students. Why do they study islands? And then each of us will explain briefly about problems and potentials in island tourism in our field of expertise, be it natural, cultural, or social aspects of tourism. So first of all, let's think about why are island tourism and studies important? So first of all, let's have a look at the world, please.
Okay, hello everyone. As a new researcher for island study, I don't think I'm qualified to answer this big question, why island study is very important. So I interviewed 4 top scholars in the island study field. So first one is Professor Adam. He is the editor of Journal of Island Study. So according to him, he mentioned island study provide us a very different lens to understand sustainability, the island culture, the island social, island economy, and island environmental issues. So another very important person is Professor Phil Howard. He is from the Journal of Shima. So according to Professor Phil, he mentioned island is provide a very unique spatial differences and distinction between small islands with a big ocean. So within this kind of a comparison, the cultural complexity is very important to observe in this limited land covered by waters. So another very important person is Professor Henry Johnson from New Zealand, and he is also the chair of Small Island Culture Research Initiative. He mentioned, again, sustainability for island destinations, environment, people, culture, and within and between and across those places. So the last person I interviewed is Professor Ayano from Okinawa. And she mentioned island study is not just interdisciplinary, it's also very important new topic related to feminism. Because in the feminist literature, we always describe island as a paradise and heaven. But in the man-based literature, we can see a lot of militarization, colonialism literature also highly mentioned in the recent decades. So after all, from my understanding, island study is highly geographical, is highly relational, is highly is very important to connect space and also the place outside the island, the connections. So again, sustainability is the focus. Everybody is talking about SDG and Sustainable Development Goal. So usually, islands are small destinations without a plan B if we don't really look into the sustainable development. Okay, that's my understanding of why island study is very important.
An island is a tourism destination, an island offering the authentic cultural and natural experience in unique settings far from the urbanized places and provide the source of island tourists. And also, island is an ideal tourism destination, so often represented as a paradise. So let me tell you one example. There's a film called Beach in 2000, starred by Leonardo DiCaprio. The story of movie is about a young American seeking adventure in Thailand, and he heard about the beautiful hidden beach island in Gulf of Thailand. Finally, he reached that beach, but yes, it was not paradise. But more interesting thing is after the movie, in reality. So many people visited the small island called Koh Phi Phi in Thailand, and the island was suffering from mass tourists called over-tourism. So this case of film-induced tourism tells us the importance of island tourism studies. So actually, like a beach tourism case, so many islands have experienced sudden and dramatic landscape changes from the growing demand for accommodations, amenities, and transportation systems. And most such places built for needs of foreign visitors, foreign tourists. So, in this situation, we need for understanding and studying economic, and physical, and social impacts demand for island tourism.
Next, let's have a look at Japan. Why is island tourism and island studies important here? As I mentioned in the introduction, all four of us work in Hiroshima University, but we are all from different countries. But we all are interested in island studies of Japan. Japan is a country which has many islands, and it has many different types and situations of islands. For example, if we look at the climate, we have islands in cold waters in the north and tropical islands in the south. We have islands that sit very close to a big city and people commute to work there by a ferry every morning, and we have other islands where it takes 20 hours by ferry to reach them. We have islands that do have a strong economic base in tourism, and we have others where just a few old people live from agriculture and maybe forestry or fishery. So, in a way, Japan is a model to study all different types of island around the world. A second important point for island studies in Japan is the population development. As you might know, Japan is a country that is losing population, and many other developed countries also have stagnating or decreasing population. On the islands especially, many people leave the islands because they cannot make a living. And so the islands are kind of forerunners for depopulation. So by studying the islands, we can have a look at the future of a society where maybe population is not growing anymore, but shrinking. In Japan, there is a very strong tradition of island studies. It focuses on the island worlds, on the closed worlds, on community structures, traditional ways of living, festivals, and things like that. So it is very much focused on what has happened up to now. Why is each island so special? Why is island A different from island B? But in the future, we need island studies in a more innovative way that can create future models for islands. So to finish, I would like to quote one of my interviewees from an island which has a very well-preserved traditional historic district. So it has a very good tourism research. But also people living in these old traditional houses are very old. More than 50% of that village are over 65. So one person from this village told me, I'm not sure, will the population die out first, or will we get enough tourists to have the island revived and young people come back here? So that tells us that tourism also is very important.
So why is tourism, island tourism, important in Japan? I like to answer this question from two perspectives. So the first is the islanders' perspective. So for the islanders, development of tourism is important because for their economy. So tourism can generate economic growth, which in turn creates jobs on the island. And this is socially important because people, especially younger generations, they can seek for job opportunities on the island instead of leaving the island to look for jobs. So it eventually could stabilize the island population overall, or it could even increase the population on the island. And also the growth in tourism is important. It can develop infrastructure on the island. And this would improve the quality of life of people on the island. So another perspective is the outsider's perspective. So that is tourist perspective. For tourists, islands are important because this is the place where they can relax and they can also forget about their busy city life. So in fact, the island is often considered a place for paradise, as mentioned earlier. And so for outsiders or tourists, islands are important for more of a health or entertainment and also maybe psychological reason. So to sum up, the island tourism is important in Japan because it can potentially revitalize the communities that are otherwise experiencing aging and depopulation. And islands also offer a place for paradise or place for outsiders to heal mentally.
So, as we have seen now, island studies and island tourism are very important around the world and in Japan. And so many of our students also study about islands. And next, I would like to introduce some of our students' opinions why they study islands. So next, let's have a look at what our students have to say about why they study islands.
I think islands have this special feature that they disconnect us from the busy life, and by that we get a chance to stay away from the hustle and bustle of the cities. And I believe in many islands there is this untouched nature, and I feel that we all have this need to have a reunion with the nature once in a while. So I think those sort of islands provide us this chance. And the access to the islands compared to the past, like many years ago, I believe nowadays it's much easier. For example, we can only drive over the bridges and we're there. So this not only give us a chance to enjoy being in the island, but we also can experience bridge tourism. So yeah, that's I think why I'm interested in the islands.
So Hiro-san, why are you interested with island?
That's because of my background. My hometown is really close to the sea, and I grew up with rich nature. Basically, there was sea, and I've been spending the whole entire times like fishing or whatever, exploring in nature. Yeah. That's the reason. That's what attracted me.
Okay, why are you interested with island tourism?
That's because I've come to love traveling more and more lately. But because of the pandemic, we can't travel abroad. So the island is a good option for me. That's why I'm interested in island tourism.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so Pin-san, why are you interested with the island?
Islands. I think I'm interested in islands in Japan in specific because there's so many islands in Japan and each island has their own unique features. So that's basically why I'm interested in island, but specifically in Japan.
So the next question is why are you interested with island tourism?
Island tourism. I think it's because basically I love traveling, and as I said before, each island of Japan has their own unique features. So that's why I'm like interested in traveling because I want to travel and then see all those interesting things of each island.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay.
So now we have heard why our students study islands. Next, let's have a look at what problems and potentials we can see in island tourism from different aspects. So we will start with the natural aspect.
Okay, so I'm going to be talking about addressing problems and potentials of island tourism with a particular focus on nature. So problems concerning nature can be divided into threats from nature and threats to nature. So threats from nature are pertaining to environmental change. And this environmental change itself may not be necessarily a threat, but because environment has always been changing to a certain degree. But this change has become more apparent in recent years because of the significant changes in climate condition. And this change was mainly driven by human activities like fossil fuel burning. So it raises the average temperature, surface temperature on Earth. So this global warming is basically refers to this human-produced temperature increase, and it's causing the sea levels to rise. And many island nations, such as Pacific island nations, they are actually on the verge of losing their land because of this rising sea levels. And climate change is also linked to severe weather, such as extremely hot weather or extreme drought or torrential rain. And torrential rain, for example, can cause this flood like you see in this picture. So while nature can be threats to human society, we can also be threats to nature. For instance, human activities can destroy vegetation, we pollute water, and we could also generate trash. And also human mobility, so humans' movement from one place to another, we could bring in new species on the island, and they might become invasive on the island. And typically, islands have very fragile environments, and species inhabiting the islands are vulnerable. So these human activities could have a detrimental impact on island ecosystem or environments. So environmental damages caused either by humans or nature, this can result in loss of natural resources. And if the island communities are relying on these natural resources for tourism, they have negatively get impacted. And environmental change also alter these natural resources. So they don't necessarily destroy natural resources, but these natural resources could alter. And this change may not be necessarily a bad thing, because changes in natural resources could bring a new type of resources to the island. So for example, maybe a new species of bird might migrate to the island. And if they are unique enough and attract tourists, they can become new tourism resources on the island. However, severe weather like typhoon, hurricane, or torrential rain, they can completely destroy or paralyze the transportation system. So they would cut the access to and from the island. Yet, tourism on the island have potential to conserve natural resources, and especially those islands with the unique nature or unique natural resources, they have potential to attract tourists who are eager to see this beautiful nature and beautiful wildlife. And Galapagos Island may be a good example for this type of natural resources. And also, island is important for being in nature is found to be very psychological beneficial for humans and people, because people can release the stress and they can relax just by visiting this island natural resources, nature-based tourism destinations.
As well as nature, the many islands have cultural problems. When tourism is engaged, the traditional culture is transformed or tourified for tourist needs and convenience. For example, dances are performing more accessible places like stage, and time is changing from night to daytime, and lengths becoming shorter for tourists don't have enough time. And many researchers worry that such touristified tradition lose its original meaning and not authentic, but it's half right and half wrong. So let's hear a voice of performer in Lijiang, China. The World Heritage City have a long history and beautiful architecture and unique ethnic cultures. Actually, Lijiang is not island, but many islands have a traditional culture confront a similar situation. So Fuhua performs traditional Nasi wedding ceremony for tourists, and it's not a real wedding day, and it's just a show for the tourists. But Fuhua says he doesn't mind if the tourists take it as a performance or for fun, and he can tell the ritual is real. So in his article, Performing Heritage, Zhu raised this case and claims dynamism of becoming authentic through such embodied practice by performer. It means one can obtain the authenticity by this touristified and looking inauthentic ritual. So, when we consider cultural problems in Ireland, we cannot talk simply tradition or culture is threatened by tourism, and we need to more understand what the authenticity and whose authenticity is. There are many theories of authenticities in tourism studies, but generally can be divided these four concepts. In the concept of objective authenticity, the authenticity is original and genuine. It's easy to understand this concept when you think of a museum or real products like coffee. In this sense, authenticity means not false. But in nowadays, there are many things of authentic reproductions or genuine fakes. So it makes blurring the discourse of objective authenticity. The more recent discourse is constructive authenticity. So rather than considering line between genuine and fake, this concept emphasized the determining and recognizing. For example, Disneyland has been recognized as part of contemporary American culture and can be authentic in this concept. To the end of the 20th century, the many tourism researchers started to focusing the self. So while previous discourses focused on tourism settings, place or something, this concept focuses authentic experience, means what is true to oneself. And lastly, the performative authenticity is also focusing oneself, but more emphasize performance, as I already mentioned in the case of Lijiang. To sum up, the considering with this concept of authenticity, it is very complex when we think what the cultural problems in Ireland. Sometimes it is visible like nature, kind of destruction of architecture, or change of lifestyle. But unlike nature, there are many invisible parts in culture. And even when visible culture is changed, residents may think they are conserving their tradition and authenticity. So, based on concept of authenticity, we can consider sustainable cultural island tourism, how to conserve tradition or island, not just objectively, but constructively and existentially, and how to cope with tourists include provide authentic experience as existential authenticity. And it is also possible some new culture, such as popular culture, from outside of the island, and how that culture can be a new, authentic culture in constructive way.
Next, let's look at some social and economic aspects of island tourism. So it was already mentioned in the natural factors section that because of bad weather, some days you might not be able to visit an island. So if you look at the left picture, you can see it's raining heavily. Would you visit an island on a day like this? And the picture on the right is a beautiful beach, very nice weather, but nobody's there. Why is that? Maybe it's a weekday, people don't have time to travel. I think it was in May in Japan. So in Japan, most people only go to the beach in summer. So we can see island tourism is very vulnerable to weather conditions and seasonal change. People don't travel on weekdays, people don't travel during bad weather, people have holidays, they only travel during the holidays. So if you want to create an island economy based on tourism, this is something you need to consider. As a result, actually, tourism has a very unstable demand. And also in tourism, we have many, many small businesses. Maybe a kayak entrepreneur, a small guest house or so. So it doesn't create really stable employment. Here is some data from Japan. First of all, we can see if we compare people working in restaurant accommodation or daily services entertainment with all industries. The percentage of holidays people working in accommodation, hotels or so take is only 32% compared to 50% of all industries. People don't have holidays in the tourism industry because they have to work when other people have holidays. And we can also see a gap in the salary. So the monthly cash earning is much less. And we have much higher percentage of people working not full time. So in general, we can say tourism does create employment, but the employment is very often unstable, the salaries are low, and the working conditions can be quite harsh. Another impact of tourism on the society is a phenomenon that we call gentrification. It means rich tourists, sometimes from other countries, buy land to build, for example, second houses on the left side, or you can see all the international tourists in the famous island of Mallorca in Spain. And because the tourists bring their money and buy goods and land, prices go up, and the local people will not be able to afford housing anymore or go to the restaurant because the prices are made for the tourists. So this is what we call gentrification. On the other hand, of course, tourism does bring money, and it also creates a positive image. I did a survey online asking Japanese people which islands in Japan they would like to visit. And most of the islands they wanted to visit are in south of Japan. So it's the tropical, the tourism islands. Okinawa, Amami, Ogasawara. So all the islands in red are the southern islands. So we can see if we ask people about islands they want to go to, it's the tourism island. Tourism has helped to put these people on our mental map. It's islands people want to go to.
So in terms of island economy, it's quite different compared how we think about economy from the urban area. So economy on the island is quite related to social issue. So when we take a look the tourist side, we have to take a look the entrepreneur side. Who are those entrepreneurs on the island? So as we know, the biggest background of rural decline in Japan, especially for those peripheral islands, they are facing more threat due to its isolation and remoteness. So the social economy impact is hard to be evaluated due to its ruralness because they are not direct benefit from the economy. So therefore, one Japanese scholar, Sasaki, he invented the term creative depopulation, which means we should take a link to the concept of the quality of life and try our best to revitalize few islands has a potential to develop tourism. So also Japanese government worked really hard by bringing the concept of Chiki Okoshi Kyotokutai, regional revitalization cooperation program, as well as a new concept of relational population. So why small islands matters? Again, back to our question from the beginning. So 3 points I want to re-emphasize. First one, small island has more fragile economic and social, also environmental structures. This is make everything is very difficult. Always they have no plan B to go back. So second, I would highlight the concept of resource restraint environment. So which means they have not enough resources to keep their original population. That's the reason why all young population moved to Tokyo and Osaka. And third, develop tourism on these resource restraint communities is very challenging and problematic. Also, we have to consider a step forward to revitalize those communities. So we have to put our attention on those creative person if we want to talk about a creative depopulation. So who are they? Those people, a lot of them are what we call them lifestyle immigrants, but they are also entrepreneurs at the same time. So they create a very diverse tourism places on the island by having the tourism side facilities. At the same time, they also have a non-tourism side to the community, social aspect and the quality of life. Also, they are quite different compared to the creative class from the urban context. Those creative class, they are not really generating the tourism revenue for themselves. They also consider the destination's social, economy, and environmental regeneration in terms of taking care of the local population. So if we connect the creative class with the creative rural concept, we can find out those people and their creativeness are quite individual, are not like the urban places. They have a creative area and a creative district. But on the rural island, they use quite different material to generate their innovation with very limited resources. So therefore, their economic benefit is indirect rather than direct. So in the end, I would emphasize they create very different creative network compared with urban context. So from our research, we've been observed many types of network. This makes the island really relational. If we look into the left side, is their contribution to their own business and also the community tourism business. And very often, in terms of local tourism creativity, there is a competition among those entrepreneurs. But on the island, in terms of group activity to promote their island and their tourism, they can become a temporary network on the destination. So these networks are not just promoting tourism development. At the right side, it also demonstrates their power to revitalize the community and promote the community, and also co-create with the community. That's very different compared with the business-oriented side. So in general, those people develop a bricolage or resourcefulness skills to use whatever they found on the island to recreate the creative island. So that's my part of creative network. Thank you.
So we have looked at island tourism problems and potentials from natural, social, and cultural aspects, and this is the literature we used. And we have time for a few questions, I think. So first of all, I was very curious. You were talking about authenticity. Could you just very simply explain what that means?
It's difficult to answer simply, but generally authenticity means real or genuine, not false or fake. But as I mentioned, authenticity in tourism is a little bit different. So to limit the discussion to tourism, the authenticity is a realness or artifact or setting, or authenticity is also one true self or being's true to self.
Yeah, I can see the border is very hard to draw, or it might be difficult even to do that.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'd like to ask a question to you. So, the tourism development inevitably involves the destruction of the nature. So, how can we find a balance between development and less damage to nature?
Yeah.
My question.
And that's really a good question. And we can achieve this by simply using it two ways. There's two ways to do this. So the first is to regulate tourists' behaviors. For example, we can set up the rules, the park, and we can also build the pathways so that tourists won't just stay on that one area instead of going to like everywhere. And another way is to charge fee, so you can control the number of people coming to either island or national park. And the other way is to educate tourists. So you can educate them by, telling them what is happening on the island or this maybe species or environment, and you can kind of encourage their pro-environmental behavior by educating tourists.
Good, yeah.
So I have a question for Mo-san. Since you mentioned about this local entrepreneurs, I was wondering, how do locals actually perceive them? Like, are they kind of supportive of these newcomers on the island?
Okay, that's a great question. So I think for answer this question, we need a comparative study on different islands. So we always find a community can do better than another one. So in some good cases, the newcomer, young entrepreneurship, they create a really good relationship with the local community, like a family. So they are part of the community. The community, elderly people, also treat them like their own young kids back to the town. So in this case, the local entrepreneur, the immigrant entrepreneurs, they create some discount system for local communities, so which locals can enjoy in a much cheaper way. And also they provide a social place, community hub to do social interactions. Basically, on the peripheral island, those elderly people are quite lonely. They want to communicate with young people. This provides a perfect chance, allow them to do the social interaction. And from contrary cases, if local business are more care about only the tourism revenue, so the community will less likely to accept them as their family member. Instead, they are just a local business. I hope I answered your question. Thank you. So I have a question for Professor Funck. So what are the differences of the economy effect between the domestic tourists and international tourists?
That's actually a very good question too, because, well, in recent years, the last 2 years, we have seen a stop to international tourism. And for islands, that is also especially a problem because, first of all, international tourists travel at different seasons. Domestic tourism is only during Japanese holidays, but international tourists come from different countries with different holidays, so they come all around the year. And also, as we saw in the video with the students, different people from different backgrounds have a different interest in islands and the sea. So I'm from Germany, and people from Germany and the north of Europe really like islands and the sea, and we go there even in winter. So if these kind of people come to travel, for example, in Japan, they would go to the islands in different seasons. So we can see international tourism contributes to stabilize the economic effects of tourism because people have different interests and they come in different seasons.
Thank you very much.
So, as you have seen, the topic of island tourism really creates a lot of potential for the future of island development, and it also creates a lot of questions. So I hope you have enjoyed today's lecture and have become interested in watching the remaining parts where we will all give individual lectures about nature, culture, creative tourism, or sustainable tourism. Thank you very much today for participating, and thank you all for listening to our lecture.